Everyone, today is a special day.
Umesh Parikh is our executive committee member. Give a big hand. Our part and parcel of our core committee. Okay.
So today is a special day. Two occasions are going on. One is Kargil Vijay Divas. So let's pray to let's pay tribute to brave troops of Indian Army for their tenacity and strength demonstrated in the Kargil War. And second event is today's Paris Olympic, beginning of the Paris Olympic. So let's convey our best wishes to the all Indian Olympic players today.
How many students?
Huh? Oh, pardon. Yes.
એટલે તો પછી બધું પૂરું જ નહીં થાય. Okay.
So, democracy is giving choice to the people. It is a quote by Forum of Regulators and PricewaterhouseCoopers. Open access is such a mechanism which gives a choice to the consumers to source their power. So we are in a democratic regime. So next. આ વખતનો જે ઉનાળો હતો એમાં આપણે જો કોઈને પૂછીએ કે ભાઈ કેવું રહ્યો દિવસ, તો જનરલ રિએક્શન એક એવું હતું કે બહુ ગરમી છે એમ, રાઈટ. વેરી નેક્સ્ટ ડે પણ તમે પૂછો તો કે ના ગઈકાલ કરતાં આજે વધારે છે. આ એક સિચ્યુએશન દર ઉનાળામાં ડેવલપ થાય છે અને નેક્સ્ટ સમર છે એ આના કરતાં પણ વધારે ડિટેરેટ થઈ હશે. તો આવું કેમ થાય છે? વાય ઇટ ઇઝ હેપનિંગ સો? તો ગ્રીન હાઉસ ગેસ એમિશન, GHG ગેસ એમિશન્સ જે થઈ રહ્યું છે, જેનું એનું લેવલ વધી રહ્યું છે ડે બાય ડે, એને લીધે ટેમ્પરેચર વધે છે અને ગ્રીન હાઉસ ગેસ જે એમિટ થાય છે એમાં પાવર સેક્ટર જે છે એનું કોન્ટ્રીબ્યુશન મેક્સિમમ છે. પાવર સેક્ટર કોન્ટ્રીબ્યુટ્સ ઓલમોસ્ટ 75% of greenhouse gas emissions. We are third largest greenhouse gas emitter after China and US. So what is the solution? How to mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions? Renewable energy is best source to mitigate greenhouse gas emission. November 21, 2021, Glasgow Conference, Prime Minister India has made a commitment in UNFFC Convention regarding our commitment to have 500 gigawatt renewable energy and 50% of renewable energy consumption by 2030. And third one is we will be net zero by 2070. So these three are the nectar elements that was announced by Prime Minister of India. Next slide. Now, in order to promote the renewable energy, Government of India has set an ambitious solar expansion program, and Gujarat government has notified RE policy 2024. Next. Central government has issued new rules for promoting renewable energy by providing simplified processes and incentives to green energy open access. First welcome step is reduction in sanction load and contract demand limit for the grant of green energy open access, which is considered as a welcome change. In earlier regulation, the limit was 1 megawatt. If you want to opt for the open access, your contract demand has to be 1 megawatt. Now in a new regulation, it is reduced to 100 kilowatt. Right? So From 100 kilowatt to 1000 kilowatt, consumer can opt for open access. Most of the previous regulations of Gujarat Green Energy Open Access regulations are in line with the central rules. Central government has also notified Green Energy Open Access regulations in 2022, and that rule empowers the state regulators to amend or notify their regulations in line with central rules. This is very important graphics which shows the renewable energy capacity through time from 2000 to 2023. In 2000, the total installed capacity was 752 gigawatts. In 2023, total installed capacity is 3870 gigawatts. China is leading with a total capacity of 1454, Europe 787 gigawatts, US 388, India 176 gigawatts, right? And the world total in 3870. Next. Now this is India's installed capacity. Total installed capacity is 444 gigawatts. Out of that 442 gigawatts, 193 gigawatts belongs to renewable energy, and rest is thermal and nuclear. So 43% of renewable energy is contributed in installed capacity. This is the electricity generation in April-May, 2 months of the new financial year. Conventional 260 billion units were generated, and renewable energy 61.84 billion units were generated out of total 322 billion units. So as on today also, 80% of energy requirement is fulfilled by the conventional energy sources, and 20% of by renewable energy sources. Cleaner and greener. In 2019, installed capacity of renewable 122 megawatts, year over year 132, 140, and 24, it is 190 gigawatts. Target is 500 gigawatt by 2030. So long way to go. See, within 6 years we have to install 310 gigawatts. 6 years. Green energy, open access regulation. So we'll first see what is green energy, and then we'll see what is open access. Open access is a new word. So green energy means electrical energy from renewable source of energy, including hydro and storage. Storage is newly added, and if the storage uses the renewable energy, then that storage is considered as a green energy. If battery BESS is charged with the solar energy, then it is considered as a green energy. Open access. What is open access? Open access is defined in section 2, subsection 47 of the Electricity Act. This is a very important definition. The non-discriminatory provision for the use of transmission lines or a distribution system by any licensee or any consumer or by person engaged in generation in accordance with the rules, regulations specified by the Commission. Meaning of non-discriminatory open access: entitlement of the users to use transmission and distribution network of the licensee. licensees owning this network cannot refuse to use merely because of such system belongs to them. Open access is possible after 10th June 2003. It is a birthday of Electricity Act 2003. Prior to that, open access was not permissible, but after 10th June, it is permissible. In other words, open access means permission to use power lines of transmission licensee and a distribution licensee. It allows, this is very important, it allows consumers to draw power from any source. And it allows generator to choose his own buyers. It enables non-discriminatory sales and purchase of electricity between the two parties under bilateral agreement. There are two modes in renewable sector. One is open access mode and another is net metering mode. Open access mode, central government has notified electricity promoting renewable energy through green energy open access, rules 2020. This is the first rules notified, and this rule enables state regulators to notify their regulations. After that, Forum of Regulators, FOR, model regulation and methodology for calculation of open access charges and banking charges for green energy open access, notified in April 2023. This is the base regulation based on which most of the state regulators have notified their green energy open access regulations. Most of the provisions are, so this is a guiding regulations. So after that, Gujarat government has notified Gujarat Renewable Energy Policy 2023 in October 2023. After that, in April 2024, GERC notified terms and conditions for Green Energy Open Access Regulations 2024. Today we will discuss provisions of these regulations. After that, GERC has notified discussion paper on tariff framework for procurement of power by distribution licensee and others from solar and wind. Necessary public hearing is completed and we are waiting for the final orders from the GERC. Another mode is grid interactive net metering mode. This regulation is notified in 2016 mainly for rooftop solar projects from 1 kilowatt to 1000 kilowatts in residential sector and commercial and industrial sector. Then comes the Gujarat Renewable Energy Policy, and this regulation, principal regulation, is amended 3 times, and 4th amendment is also notified, but these are a draft stage. 4th amendment, final order is awaited. As you have seen, government has set an intensive target of 500 gigawatt. So government has set various strategy how to achieve it and how to promote this green energy regulation, green energy. So first is waiver of intrastate transmission system, ISTS charges for interstate sale of solar and wind power for the projects to be commissioned by 30 June 2025. So if any generator wants to sell their power, renewable power from Gujarat to any other state, ISTS charges and ISTS losses are waived. So ISTS losses. ISTS losses are decided by Grid Controller of India. ISTS बस आलं. All India transmission loss for the month of July 2024 is 3.54%. So if any generator transmits from one state to another state, this 3.54% loss is exempted. Government has declared RPO trajectory. Central government has declared RPO trajectory up to the year 2029 to 30. RPO trajectory. Okay. RPO for this central government has decided up to 2029-30 and Gujarat government, Gujarat regulator has decided up to 2425. Next. Okay. PM government also declared schemes like PM Kusum, PM Suryagar Yojana, PM Suryagar Mukta Bijli Yojana for the development of renewable sources, renewable energy, laying of the new transmission lines and creating new substations capacity under green energy corridor scheme for evacuation of renewable power. Notification of standards for deployment of solar photovoltaic cells. Government MNRE has declared standards for solar photovoltaic cells. Standard bidding guidelines. TBCB, tariff-based competitive bidding, is also notified by MNRE. Green energy open access rules is also notified by central government. And this framework will ensure energy security and support economic development of the states. There are two business models exist in renewable sector. One is capex model and another is opex model. Capex model means capital expenditure model. So this capex model is most popular in renewable sector because the benefits that are offered is higher than opex model. In capex model, one of the it is the ownership model. Users has to pay the total cost. Consumer has to pay total cost to the system developer. Capex model needs its own capital expenditure for the solar project plant setup. Customer holds the possession of the asset. Whole plant is owned by customer. The customer pays all the equipment design, installation and commission cost. The responsibility of O&M is also lies with customer. But usually a consumer gives O&M contract to the developer. Required to make an upfront investment. In capex model, upfront investment is required. In opex model, operation and expenses model, the user is required to pay. The user is not required to pay the total cost. Total cost is paid by the system developer. Only users have to pay the tariff, mutually agreed tariff to the developer. Under the OPEX model, Renewable Energy Service Company, RESCO Invest, installs and takes care of on-site solar plant. Customer pays for the power generated under the long-term, medium-term power purchase agreement for a fixed tenure at a mutually agreed tariff. Normally, the developer offers discount on variable cost of the consumers, electricity bill. So that we will see in our case study. Investment and performance risk of a capex model is elevated in OPEX model. Customer only pays for the energy generated with no significant asset-based investment, makes the capex model economical upfront. Even with the PPA, this power is considered cheaper than the grid power. The reason is developer offers discount on variable cost. OPEX model is also known as third party ownership model. So OPEX model, third party ownership model, and the RESCO model, one in the same. Now, green energy open access regulations. Green energy open access can be availed by licensee, green energy generator, and consumers. Any one of these can avail green energy open access. Applicable to contract demand of 100 kilowatt and more. As I said earlier, previously it was 1 megawatt limit. The limit is reduced to 100 kilowatt. Okay, multiple connections with aggregate contract demand of 100 kilowatt or more, but located in the same division of DISCOM is allowed. Suppose a consumer is having two units, one is in subdivision A and another is in subdivision B of the same O&M division. Then aggregate demand will be considered. If consumer A has contract demand of 60 kilowatt and another has a contract demand of 40 kilowatts, so aggregate of that will be considered as a contract demand. So this is also a welcome facility. Banking charge of rupees 1.5 per kilowatt is applicable. That banking charge will discuss separately in another slides. Next project. Categorization of green open access energy. Long-term open access energy, right to use intrastate transmission system and or a distribution system up to a period of exceeding period of 12 years to 25 years. So if anybody demands a open access, green energy open access up to suppose say 20 years, then he has to apply under long-term open access category. Medium-term open access category. Right to use intrastate transmission system and or a distribution system for a period exceeding 3 months to 3 years. So from 3 months to 3 years, MTOA is allowed. And the short-term green energy open access means open access for a period up to 1 month at a time. And fresh application is required after every expiry of every short-term open access. So basically there are 3 categories: medium term, long term, short term, and medium term. Criteria for allowing green energy open access. Short term and medium term is allowed if inherent design margin and margin available due to variation in power flow permits. First condition. Second condition is ABT compliant meter for generation and consumer end, or 1 megawatt and above GEOA. If green open access energy is granted for 1 megawatt and above, then 0.2S class ABT meter and at both end, consumer end as well as generation end is required. And if open access is granted below 1 megawatt, then installation of special energy meters capable of recording energy in 15-minute time block is required. And third document is no dues from the concerned DISCOMs or state nodal agency. Application procedure for green energy open access. Green energy open access application to be made to the nodal agency in the prescribed form with necessary documents, details, and required fees. Undertaking of, this is important, undertaking of not having entered into a PPA or any bilateral agreement with more than one person for the capacity for which open access is requested. Consumer eligible to enter into a PPA or any other bilateral agreement with more than one person within a quantum of GOA is granted. So consumer can source power from multiple renewable energy. Eligibility criteria for applying green energy open access. Consumer having, as I said earlier, consumer having contract demand of 100 kilowatt and more through a single connection is eligible for sourcing the green power. Consumer having multiple connections aggregating contract demand of 100 kilowatt or more located in the same electricity division is also eligible. No limitations in terms of contract demand in case of captive consumers. Consumers, licensees and or GENCOs eligible for green energy open access to intrastate transmission system of the state transmission utility or a transmission licensee distribution system within the state on payment of transmission charges, wheeling charges and other charges. So green energy open access to the intrastate utility is granted on payment of the transmission charges, transmission losses, wheeling charges, wheeling losses, cross subsidy surcharge and additional surcharge as decided by the regulators. Requirement of ABT meter of 0.2S class and RTU remote terminal unit for green energy open access above 1 megawatt. If open access is granted above 1 megawatt, then RTU installation of RTU is mandatory. RE generator having existing PPA with discounts are not entitled for green energy open access for which PPA is executed. Captive generating plant have right to open access as per section 9 and other provisions of the Electricity Act 2003 and the rules framed thereunder. Captive generating plant needs to honor provisions related to equity with voting right and utilization of electricity generated for their own use on annual basis. So when there is a group captive power plant, there are two conditions. One is equity with voting rights. Equity capital with voting rights should not be less than 26%, and annual consumption shall not be less than 51%. Captive consumers are required to submit details and documents to DISCOMs and GERC for compliance of its captive status and plant and consumption on financial year basis. Earlier, this group captive certification was given by Electrical Inspectorate. Now DISCOMs and GERC will consider group captive. All applications to be submitted to Central Nodal Agency, and Central Nodal Agency will forward application to State Nodal Agency. Who are the nodal agencies? Central Transmission Utility for Interstate Long-Term Access and Medium-Term Access. State Transmission Utility, that is JETCO, for Intrastate Long-Term Open Access and Medium-Term Open Access. Regional Load Dispatch Center for Interstate Short-Term Open Access. And State Load Dispatch Center for Intrastate Short-Term Open Access. These are the nodal agencies. Treatment for existing open access consumers. Existing green energy open access consumers are governed by the relevant provisions of GOG or orders or regulations of CERC under the control period under which the RE generation is commissioned. So prior to notification of this regulation, if any green energy open access is governed under that order, they will continue to avail the benefits of that order, not regulation 24. Generators commissioned after notification of these regulations are governed as per the GOA regulations, these new regulations. If any inconsistency persists between the provisions of orders and green energy open access regulations, the provision of new regulation prevails. And in case of, this is also important, in case of green energy open access for additional capacities applied by the existing consumers or generator or licensee in addition to existing open access, the additional capacity will be treated as a new application for green energy open access to the extent of additional capacity. And benefits will be passed as per the new regulation. Now, allotment priority. Highest priority is given to the distribution licensee over other green energy consumers. Maybe a long-term open access consumers, medium-term open access consumers, or short-term open access consumers. DISCOM has highest priority. Green energy open access consumers have highest priority over normal open access consumers in the same OA category. And amongst the green energy open access consumers, long-term green energy open access have highest priority, followed by medium-term and subsequently by short-term. So short-term open access consumers have least priority. And GEOA will be granted on the basis of first come first serve basis. Medium-term open access and long-term open access consumers not to relinquish his rights and obligations specified in GEOA agreement without prior approval of state nodal agency and licensee. The relinquishment is subject to the payment of compensation as per the provision of these regulations. So consumers, open access consumers can relinquish their open access capacity in part or in full, subject to the payment of charges. Energy accounting, interstate transactions and intrastate transactions. For interstate transactions, including interstate RE projects located in Gujarat and connected to ISTS network for supplying power to consumers in Gujarat, energy accounting will be as per the provision of central regulations. And intrastate transactions, deviation charges payable by the wind and solar generators are as per Forecasting and Scheduling Regulations 2019. Forecasting and scheduling is applicable to open access consumers having installed capacity above 1 megawatt. Up to 1 megawatt, forecasting and scheduling regulation is not applicable. So in another way, rooftop net metering up to 1 megawatt, scheduling and forecasting is not required. So these are the various charges applicable to the green energy open access consumers. Transmission charges for the use of interstate transmission system as specified by the CERC. CERC specifies green energy open access charges on weekly basis, and that too on per megawatt per block basis. For this week, it is 97 rupees 11 paisa per megawatt per block. So that comes to around 39 paisa per kWh as a transmission charges. Then for the use of intrastate transmission system, that is the network of JETCO, transmission charges are to be paid by the GEOA consumers as determined by the GERC as per the prevailing provision of MYT. Transmission charges are decided by the regulators for the use of intrastate transmission system in tariff petition. Wheeling charges are paid by the open access consumers to DISCOMs, payable to DISCOMs by the green energy open access consumers, and this charges is also determined by regulators in tariff petition. Wheeling loss determined by the GERC, and this is also decided by GERC in tariff petition itself. Cross subsidy surcharge. Cross subsidy surcharge is determined by GERC in its tariff order, is applicable to GERC consumers. Here, captive open access consumers and group captive open access consumers are exempted from the payment of cross subsidy surcharge. Today, cross subsidy surcharge is applicable at a rate of ₹1.52 per unit. That is with effect from 1st June. Cross subsidy surcharge is payable on actual green units consumed during the billing period, not on injected units, but net of losses, payable on rupees per kWh basis. Cross subsidy surcharge is not levied on green energy overhead consumers, provided to the consumers having captive generating plant for carrying out the electricity to destination for his own use. Is also not applicable to the fossil fuel based municipal solid waste to energy plant supplied to green energy OA consumers. Next. Additional surcharge. Additional surcharge is not applicable to green energy open access consumers to the extent of contract demand being maintained with the distribution licensee. This is welcome step. Earlier, this additional surcharge was applicable to all consumers under third party mechanism. But this time it is exempted up to the contract demand. Meaning thereby, if any consumer, suppose, is having a contract demand with a discount of 2500 kVA, and if he opts or if he is entering into a bilateral agreement for renewable energy and contracting for 3500 kVA, so he is paying demand charge. He is paying demand charge up to 2500 kVA. But from 2500 kVA to 3500 kVA, he is not paying. So he has to pay additional surcharge for additional 1000 kVA only. Earlier, up to for whole demand, he has to pay. Additional surcharge is not applicable to captive transactions. Like cross subsidy surcharge, additional surcharge is also not applicable to captive generators. Next. Additional surcharge is decided separately, not in a tariff order, separately by regulators twice in a year, sorry. That is for 1st April to 31st October and 30th September and 1st October to 31st March. This is from 1st April 2024 to 30th September, additional surcharge is ₹1 per unit. Additional surcharge is also not applicable to the power produced from the offshore wind projects commissioned up to December 32 and supplied to the green energy open access consumers. Standby charges. There are total 14 charges are applied on green energy open access. Even though it is cheaper, we'll show you in detail also. Next slide is for that only. Standby charges in case of GEO consumer fails to procure power from the RE generator due to the outage of generation or a transmission line system and or like anything like that. The standby charge arrangement is provided by the distribution licensee. Now for that, distribution licensee will ask for the payment of the standby charges from the GOA consumers. Now what is the rate of standby charges? Standby charges at a rate of 10% of energy charges, including FPPA charges, as applicable to the consumer's tariff category. Suppose that industrial consumer is having this energy charge of ₹4.20. There are three charges: ₹4, ₹4.20, and ₹4.30. So let's say For understanding, 4 rupees 20 paisa is energy charge, and FPPA as on today is 2 rupees 85 paisa per unit. Right? So 4 rupees 10 paisa plus 2 rupees 80 paisa, 6 rupees 95 paisa. And 10% of this 6.95 paisa, this roughly 70 paisa per unit is a standby charge. And standby charge is over and above the normal tariff. एक Standby charges are not applicable if green energy open access consumers has given notice in advance, at least by 1 day. So this is good. Next slide. Now banking, the most debated word. Banking means renewable energy sector. So what is banking with reference to green energy open access? Banking means surplus green energy injected in the grid and credited with the distribution licensee by the consumer, which is drawn from the distribution licensee. Now that surplus energy is drawn from the distribution licensee on billing cycle basis on payment of banking charges, which will compensate the distribution licensee. This accounting is done in time block wise. Each time block is having a 15 minutes. So in a day there will be 96 time block. So suppose time block 11:30 to 11:45, net renewable energy injected is 200 units, and total draw is 180 units. Surplus is 20 units for that particular time block, right? So that is known as a bank energy with the distribution licensee. And this 20 units you can utilize within a billing period, right? Billing cycle of 30 days. So 2 months what is આપણે રેસિડેન્શિયલ માં એલાઉ કરે છે. Yeah, it's okay. Residential માં 2 months okay.
Total 20, 40, what is bank?
Sir?
What is bank
Billing cycle. Roughly about 2770 time blocks for 30 days of billing cycle. Billing facility is permitted to open green energy consumers. Banking, sir, it is already discussed. Banking of energy will be evaluated on energy accounting on 15-minute time block basis. The difference between the injected green energy available at the consumption point and consumer's consumption in same 15-minute time block is considered as the bank energy. This is what we have discussed in previous slide. Yes. Consumption of bank energy is permitted on billing cycle basis. Bank energy available during the peak period. This is very important provision. Bank energy during the peak period is allowed to be utilized during the peak period only. The peak period as well as in the off-peak period. And bank energy available during the off-peak period is to be utilized during the off-peak period only. This bank energy of off-peak period cannot be utilized during the off-peak period. So we have 2 peak periods. One peak period starts from morning 7 to 11, 4 hours. And another peak period, evening peak, starts from 6 to 10, right? Banking facility is optional. If I want to avail the banking facility, I can. And if you don't want to avail the banking facility, it's optional. So not mandatory. In case of consumer opts not to avail the banking facility, the same is permitted on furnishing undertaking in this regard. That open access consumer has to furnish undertaking that I don't want to avail banking facility. That's enough. Once option is exercised that I don't want to avail this banking facility, then change is not permitted. I cannot go to banking facility before a completion of 3 years. from the date of operationalization. And in case of banking facilities not availed, the energy accounting, again it will be in a 15-minute time block basis, and surplus energy, if any, after the adjustment in 15-minute time block, will be considered as an inadvertent flow of energy. And no compensation for this lapsed energy will be given by the distribution company. And this lapsed energy, for this lapsed energy, REC, that consumer is also not entitled for renewable energy certificate. Banking facility avail કરવી છે કે નથી કરવી, that option is provided. હા, પેલામાં અંડરટેકિંગ આપવાનું છે. Okay. The banking charge at ₹1.50 per unit is effective from the date of notification of regulation up to 30th September 2024. For the 1st October and onwards period, regulator will review this banking charge. They may increase or they may decrease. So banking charge will be decided on monthly basis as per the provision of this regulation, on monthly basis, quarterly basis, or half yearly basis, as deemed fit by regulator. Permitted quantum of bank energy by green energy open access consumer shall be at least 30% of the total consumption of electricity drawn from the distribution utility. This is very annoying clause, regulation. Different people interpret in a different way. Permitted quantum of bank energy by open access consumer shall be at least 30% of the total consumption of electricity drawn from the distribution utility. If a consumer's total consumption, say, for the month is 100 units, right? Total units, total consumption, that is from the DISCOM as well as from the renewable sources. And say 30 units is wheeled from the solar sector, solar energy. So only 70 units is drawn from the MGVC, rather DISCOMs. 30% of the total consumption of electricity drawn from the utility, 30% of 70 units, right? So around 21 to 22 units. So your bank energy is more than the 20 to 21 units, then it is allowed. If it is 15 units, it will be considered as a lapse unit. At least 30% of the total consumption, at least, not less than. Right? Not less than. Some people interpret it as up to 30%. But regulator has categorically denied this in statement of reasons for this regulation. Credit of bank energy is not permitted to be carried forward to the subsequent billing cycle. In the same billing cycle, it has to be adjusted. Unutilized surplus bank energy is considered as lapsed energy. Unutilized surplus energy is considered as lapsed energy at the end of each billing cycle. And RE generator is entitled to REC only to the extent of lapsed bank energy if project is registered under REC mechanism. Viability of banking facility primarily needs detailed study of time block wise consumption pattern vis-a-vis time block wise solar generation of a solar plant. Then only we can work out whether banking is viable or not. Detailed study is required. Different charges are applied on green energy open access consumers. Pardon? So first is transmission charge, 4130.32 rupees per megawatt per day. marginally increased from last year. These rates are effective from 1st June. Right? Transmission loss. As per the SLDC monthly report, SLDC uploads their monthly transmission loss on its website. So last month transmission loss of the Gujarat were 3.29%, 3.29%. Wheeling charge is paid to distribution company. It is 0.1473 per unit, decided by regulator in tariff petition, in tariff order. Wheeling loss 8.5%, decided by regulator in tariff petition. Earlier it was 9.5%. 1% is reduced with effect from 1st June, and prior to that it was 10%. Multi-location charges, 5 paisa per unit, decided by regulators in petition, in separate order. So if a consumer, this is more frequent, it is applicable to third-party generators because they enter into agreement with multiple consumers. So when multiple locations are there, then 5 paisa per unit is additionally applied. Banking charge, 1 rupees 50 paisa per banked unit. Standby charge is 10% of energy charge plus fuel and power purchase price adjustment charge. Transaction charge 3,000 rupees per month. Scheduling charge 2,000 rupees per day. Meter reading charge is newly introduced, 1,000 rupees per month. Reactive drawal charges, 10 paisa per unit or 50 paisa per unit as the case will be. And DSM charges, deviation settlement mechanism charges as per the regulation 2019. Transmission charge and transaction charge. Reactive drawal charges. 10 paisa per kWh and 50 paisa per kWh. Right? Now, the thing is, sir, if your reactive drawal is up to 10% of net export of energy, right? kWh, then it is 10 paisa per unit. But if it exceeds the 10%, reactive drawal exceeds the 10%, then 50 paisa per unit is applicable. This is decided by regulator in tariff order of JETCO. And since years together, it is 10 paisa and 50 paisa. Commission has not increased or decreased it. Transaction charge is
application charges for this. आणि application जे काही करिये ने दर महिन्याने हे transaction charge करिये.
Application charges is different, but transaction charges છે SLDC જેનો રેકોર્ડ મેન્ટેન કરે છે તો એના માટે.
But ये application charge है जो charge होते हैं.
ના this is not ના one time every month છે every month છે every month.
હવે સમાનનું જે સોલર પાવર પ્લાન્ટ છે ત્યાંથી એનો ડેટા કોઈ પ્રોજેક્ટથી લો તમારે એસએલડીસી માં
This transaction charge is collected by state nodal agency. SN.
As you are transmitting power, generating comes to the
Consumer.
consumer, you are using this, so you have to record this. That's why it is transaction charge.
Yeah, all records are being maintained by state nodal agency.
Actually, any definition aviation, applicant has to pay. The applicant may be the consumer, applicant may be the
Generator.
operator, applicant may be the
Generator.
generator. Who has the applicant, he has to pay.
Yeah, he has to pay as a transaction charge.
પણ જે ટ્રાન્સમિશન ચાર્જ છે ને પહેલું જે તમે કીધું
હા.
એમાં મોટા ભાગે જે ગ્રીન ઓપન એસેસ છે આપણા કે જે સેમ ડિસ્કોમમાં હોય તો આઈ થિંક ટ્રાન્સમિશન
અને હું આગળ છે સ્લાઇડ એ આખી સ્કીમેટિક ડાયાગ્રામથી બતાવું છું. એ પણ એક ડિબેટેડ ઇસ્યુ છે. એમાં ટ્રાન્સમિશન ચાર્જ તો નથી જ લાગતો, પણ ટ્રાન્સમિશન લોસ છે એ અમુક ડિસ્કોમ લગાડે છે, અમુક ડિસ્કોમ નથી લગાડતી.
ડિવાઇડેડ છે કે માનીએ છીએ કે સેમ વોલ્ટેજ લેવલ પર જનરેશન હોય તો ટ્રાન્સમિશન નેટવર્ક નથી વપરાતો ખાલી
I'll just show you.
એવું ઇન્ટરપ્રિટેશન.
Please. Schematic diagram. हाँ. Banking facility for green energy open access in other states. We are straightway we are charging 1 rupees 50 paisa per unit. But Andhra Pradesh, 8% of bank energy. 8% of bank energy, and banking up to 30% of the total energy, not at least, but up to 30%. Right? So same way, Haryana 8% of energy bank up to 30%. Then Telangana 8% energy bank and at least 30% in line with Gujarat. Then Madhya Pradesh is also in line with Gujarat, at least 30%. Rest of the states up to 30% and 8% of bank charges. Well, we have a different charge of 1 rupees 50 paisa. Renewable purchase obligation and green certificates. Regulations provide for uniform RPO for obligated entities, which may be made through. Obligated entities are distribution licensee, then open access consumers, right? These are and captive consumers are also obligated entities. 3 entities. Now they can meet RPO through self-generation of renewable energy, procurement of renewable energy through open access from third-party cell, purchasing REC, renewable energy certificates, and requisition to DISCOMs. Purchasing REC means he has to purchase renewable energy certificates to comply the RPO. The REC market, I will just tell you, when RECs were introduced in 2010, RECs were traded at 17,000 rupees per REC. 17,000 rupees per REC, that was its forbearance price. 10th July 2024, REC is traded at 128 rupees. 128 rupees per REC. There was huge inventory. There is a huge inventory, but there is no demand. So REC is on deathbed. Within a year or 2, it will finish. Then requisition to DISCOMs. Regulatory Commission has introduced green tariff in its tariff order. Last year also introduced, and this year also introduced. Last year, green energy tariff was at 1 rupees 50 paisa, and this year it is 1 rupees 50 paisa is reduced. Green energy tariff. So if anybody wants to have a green energy, he has to just give a simple application in 1 month advance to the division office of the distribution licensee. The licensee will manage to supply green energy to that consumer at a premium of 1 rupees per unit, or at a premium of 1 rupees over and above the normal tariff. But distribution licensee will give certificate that we have supplied green energy to these consumers. So that can be that can fulfill their RPO requirement. Sir, regulation is silent for that. Regulation is silent for that. But REC is required to be purchased by that licensee from the market. Schematic diagram of 1 megawatt AC green energy open access under captive mode, having inter-say location of injection and drawal within the same DISCOM. Okay. Title itself covers everything. Schematic diagram of 1 megawatt AC green energy open access under captive mode, having inter-say location of injection and drawal is within the same DISCOM. Inter-say location of injection and drawal within the same DISCOM is very important. This is the most popular model in green energy open access. No, sir. This consumer is our client. I have analyzed energy generation and energy set off for the month of March 24. Total energy generation, solar energy generated at plant side 1,76,700 units. That energy is transferred to substation A, JETCO substation A, through dedicated lines. Dedicated network is laid by the developer, not the consumer. At JETCO substation end, energy received is 1,72,863 units. So dedicated line loss is 3,874 units. That comes to 2.19%. 2.19% loss of dedicated 11 kV line. From this substation A is an interface point, right? From substation A to substation B, transmission loss of 3.22% is applied, right? And at substation B is a receiving end substation, 1,67,200 units is received. Huh? This is applied. Some discoms are applying transmission loss, some are not applying.
તમે આ કયા discount?
So at substation B, energy received is 1,67,000, and at a consumer end, after deducting distribution loss or a billing loss, as specified by the regulator, 9.5%, consumer is receiving energy set off of 86,182 units. Now this 9.5%, since it is of March, it is 9.5%. If it is of June and onwards, it is 8.5%.
એક સવાલ કરું સેમ કે તમારી સેકન્ડ સ્લાઇડ કે જેમાં ISPS ચાર્જ નથી
ISTS charge?
જે ગ્રીન ઓપન એસેસ માટેનો ISPS ચાર્જ નથી ત્યાં લોકો લોસની શું ટ્રીટમેન્ટ કરે છે
ISTS charge એટલે it includes losses as well as charges. એ બંનેમાં એને exemption આપેલું છે for the project commission up to June 2002.
વર્ડ વાપર્યું છે ISPS ચાર્જ
હા ચાલ એ ઘણી વખત રહી
વર્ડ લખેલું નથી
એ મારું પણ
એ વસ્તુ અહીંયા નહીં ISPS માં પણ થઈ શકે
હા પણ નોર્મલી ઇટ ઇઝ ઇન્ટરપ્રિટેડ કે રેગ્યુલેશનમાં પણ ઘણી વખત બિલિંગ લોસ અને એકલા ટ્રાન્સમિશન ચાર્જ લખે છે અને ટ્રાન્સમિશન બિલિંગ ચાર્જ લખે છે બટ ઇટ ઇઝ એપ્લિકેબલ ટુ ટ્રાન્સમિશન ચાર્જ એન્ડ ટ્રાન્સમિશન લોસ ઓલ્સો. So under policy 2021, the consumer is governed under policy 2021. He got a set off of 86,162 units and surplus generated is 62,222 units. Right? Now if this consumers migrates to policy 2023, then set off will be 1,51,403 units and surplus will be zero. How it is possible? I will show you in the next slide. Next to next slide. Okay. So for back. March loss is dedicated line loss is 2.19%, and for April I have calculated it to 2.24%. So the conclusion is dedicated line loss of 11 kV is in the range of 2 to 2.5%, whereas regulator mandates for 8.5% 11 kV line loss. Actual line loss and regulatory line loss are, there is a wide gap. Next year. This is the energy accounting and commercial settlement of the consumers which we have discussed earlier. Both the energy accounting as well as commercial settlement under policy 201, and if we migrate to the policy 2023, what are the benefits that I will discuss. So serial number 1 to 8 is energy accounting and serial number 9 to 16 is a commercial settlement. Let us first discuss policy 2021. Total draw, Discom plus solar, 2,22,900 units. Discom bill amount for this 2,22,000 is 18,10,800 rupees. Solar injected at generation rate, at interface point at 1,72,800 units. Solar billed units net of losses after applicable of transmission loss and billing loss, 1,51,400 units. Out of this 1,51,000 loss, solar wind units, 86,181 is captive consumption. So this consumer, these are the actual pictures. So he got a set off for 86,000 units, and balance 65,000 units, 65,222 units is considered as a surplus unit, right? So total unit set off is 86,000 units, that's mentioned there. Now net draw from the DISCOM is 1,36,000. Next, please. Net draw from the DISCOM is 1,36,700 units. 2,22,000 minus 86,000, that comes to 1,36,000 units. Now set off. Set off in consumption charge. Set off is given in consumption charge excluding ED. That is a variable cost. And ED. So the set off works out to 6,87,000 units. Surplus purchased by the DISCOM. That surplus 65,000 units is purchased by the DISCOM. That works out to 1,46,000 rupees. The total credit from this solar is 8,33,000 rupees. Now the charges paid by the open access consumers to the DISCOM, banking charge at 1 rupees 50 paisa, 94,799 units. This is applied, this is worked out on captive consumption 86,181 unit multiplied by 1 rupees 50 paisa, that comes to 94,000 rupees. Wheeling charge 0.17 paisa rupees, that works out to 29,923 units. So total charge is for which debit is made is 1,24,000 rupees. And he got a total set off amount in the bill 7,09,104 units. So DISCOM's bill after the total set off is 11 lakhs rupees. So bill is reduced from 18 lakhs to 11 lakhs rupees after getting set off. That is under policy 21. Sir, back question. DISCOM has entered into a provisional wheeling agreement with these consumers, and it is under option 2. What does this option 2 say? It says that the solar project registered under the Gujarat Solar Policy 21 before the notification of Renewable Energy Policy 23 and to avail the benefits of RE Policy 2023. This consumer, open access consumers, can avail or can migrate to the provisions of 2023 policy. So while executing the final agreement, it will be executed under RE Policy 2023. So next. So taking advantage or benefit of this clause of agreement, provisional agreement, the energy accounting and commercial mechanism for policy 2023 is also worked out. Total draw will remain same, 2,22,000 units. Total bill of the DISCOM will also 18,10,000 units, it will also same. Solar injected 1,70,000 at interface point is also same. Total solar wind units, net of losses is also same, 1,51,000. But captive solar consumption, because of the monthly banking, he got a set of captive consumption of 1,29,000 units instead of 86,000 units. Surplus solar unit, it was in the policy 21 65,000, under policy 23 it is 22,000 units. So total solar under policy 23 1,51,403 units instead of 86,000. Net draw from the DISCOM is reduced to 71,500 unit. Now, commercial settlement. Set off in consumption charges and electricity duty works out to 12 lakhs to 12 lakhs 279 unit. Under policy 21, it is 6 lakhs 87,000. Surplus energy purchase 0, because there is no surplus energy. Surplus energy is adjusted because of monthly billing cycle. So total credit is 12 lakhs 279. Now the banking charge is also reduced to 33,040 rupees. Billing charge, same billing charge is applicable on injected solar energy, so it is also same 29,900, and total debit will be reduced to 62,000 rupees. And set off amount, instead of 7 lakhs, he will get 11 lakhs 37,000 rupees as a set off, and his bill is reduced to 6 lakhs 73,000 rupees, from 18 lakhs to 6 lakhs 73,000 units. So policy 223 is viable. These are the actual calculations. Yes. These are the three different type of agreements required to be executed by open access consumers. There is connectivity agreement, billing agreement, and memorandum of understanding for maintenance of dedicated lines. Every year, that consumer has to pay 1.5% of estimated charges towards maintenance to JETCO and DISCOMs. Next. This is the actual curve of a solar generation during the October 23. Monthly generation is 2,51,162 units. These are different consumers. Important is from 11 to 12, maximum units are generated, 31,353. Then gradually generation reduces. After 16 hours is reduces. And consumer gets set off from 7 hours to 18 hours. So from 6 to 7 generation, that is 158 units, and 18 to 19 hours, 137 units, DISCOM will purchase at rupees 2.25 paisa per unit. This is in terms of percentage. Curtailment priority. In case of curtailment is required, then short-term open access consumers shall be curtailed first, followed by the normal short-term open access consumer is curtailed first, compared to green energy open access short-term consumer. Right, sir? અને કલેક્ટિવ ये तो एक्सचेंज थ्रू है. Then comes the medium term consumers. Then comes the long term open access consumer. Distribution licenses shall be curtailed at last resort. Last slide ले लो सर, चलिए एक मिनट. This is of your interest, sir. So, in a commercial settlement, consumer is benefited. In this slide, society as a whole is benefited because of renewable. So, environmental support from 1 megawatt solar plant. Carbon dioxide mitigation, 1170 tons per year. Oxides of nitrogen 2.84 tons per year is mitigated. Oxides of sulfur 2.36 tons per year. Suspended particulate 163 kg per year. And planting this 1 megawatt solar plant is equal to planting of teak wood trees over lifetime 49,000 numbers.
इतना सारा डिस्पोजिशन दिख रहा
क्या
है
करना है?
मेरा क्वेश्चन इतना सारा डिस्पोजिशन दिख रहा है एनवायरनमेंट में इसका कोई
इफेक्ट नहीं दिख रहा है।
वो नहीं दिख रहा
नहीं दिख रहा।
एनवायरनमेंट अभी भी डिस्टर्ब
क्योंकि उतना ऐड हो रहा है ना सर।
ज्यादा हो रहा है
So open access is widely recognized as the soul of the Electricity Act 2003. Said by S.K. Chatterjee and Alok Kumar. Both are instrumental. Both have played instrumental role in devising Electricity Act 2003. Regard for public welfare is the highest law, and let the implementation challenges not vitiate the overall vision. Right? Vision of the Act 2003 should not be vitiated. That's the question.
Yes, very few questions. We can take one or two. Yes, sir. I will start. Yeah, because
Now થવો જોઈએ. Okay. Approval. Okay. Target. Near. Evacuation